I will start with activities of the past week in which the Prime Minister has made an appearance. On Sunday, September 5th, this marked the official closing of the Green Legacy season with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed present, together with cabinet members to preside over the ceremony. As you recall, the Prime Minister's Green Legacy initiative was launched in 2019 as a response to a myriad of environmental challenges with the aim of planting 20 billion seedlings in 4 years. The 2021 planting season was the third round undertaken nationwide, and the total number of seedlings planted in the past 3 years exceeds 18 billion, indicating that Ethiopia has within a 3-year window surpassed each of the yearly targets. I will come back to you at another point in time in terms of the survival rate for the ones that had been planted last year, but overall, the conclusion of this year's planting ended on a very positive note, enabling or catalyzing much more mobilization for the fourth year, which will be upcoming in 2022. Another activity that the Prime Minister had engaged in is 2 visits that had been undertaken. On Tuesday, September 7th and Wednesday, September 8th, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed traveled with a delegation to Dakar, Senegal, and Accra, Ghana, meeting with President Macky Sall and President Nana Akufo-Addo, respectively. The visits and related meetings are a continuation of the ones that have been undertaken over the past weeks in other countries, engaging in discussions centered on bilateral ties and African issues. Moving on to the second part of today's briefing, I will focus on humanitarian response update in the northern part of the country. Per the data received from the National Disaster Risk Management Commission, in Afar, which also comprises more than 500,000 that have been displaced over the past 2 weeks as a result of TPLF's incursions, the federal government and partner, WFP to be specific, are mobilizing resources for the internally displaced persons. And as of August 31st, according to NDRMC, or the National Disaster Risk Management Commission, and WFP, they have distributed together 7,655 quintals of food for 45,000 displaced persons. This food assistance includes wheat flour, rice, pulse oil, and wheat. WFP has allocated 3 rounds of food to be delivered up to October 2021. And a regional emergency coordination center, as had been indicated the last time, is also actively working on coordinating the humanitarian activities within the Afar region. In Amhara region, the IDPs are mainly from Wagamra, North Gondar, South Gondar, and North Wallo zones of the region. Internally displaced persons who have been displaced from different waradas in North Wallo due to TPLF's provocations and attacks, and currently sheltered in Dese town, have reached more than 150,000. As of August 31st, this is the latest data, the NDRMC, the National Disaster Risk Management Commission, and partners have distributed over 23,000 quintals of food for IDPs in Dese town, and more than 140,000 beneficiaries have been reached. 57% of this food assistance has been distributed by the National Disaster Risk Management Commission. The food consists of wheat, flour, rice, corn, soya bean, as a supplement for pregnant women in the area. It also includes oil, pulse, and wheat. 8,600 quintals of food, including wheat flour, corn, soya bean, and rice, have also been dispatched to Wagamra zone of Amhara region for 51,000 beneficiaries. From this, the NDRMC, or the National Disaster Risk Management Commission, dispatched 3,600 quintals. The Joint Emergency Operation, which includes REST, World Vision, CARE, and FH, dispatched 5,000 quintals. An additional 2,000 quintals of food is headed to Sakota Warada of the Wagamra zone. Again, information that I have from NDRMC is that 2,000 quintals of food assistance has also been delivered to IDPs in North Gondar Dabark who have been displaced by TPLF's belligerents in the Amhara region. This assistance is expected to serve up to 13,000 beneficiaries. The government is now working with partners to further coordinate humanitarian response in North Wallo and Wagamra zones and the North Gondar zone as well. Incident Command Post has been established in Dese town to oversee the humanitarian response in North Wallo and South Wallo, and efforts are ongoing to activate an additional Incident Command Post in North Gondar zone, Dabark town. Within the Tigray region, as of September 4th, 2021, the number of trucks that have entered the Tigray region and reached their destination is 535 trucks, while more trucks are still en route. The WFP has also confirmed that additional trucks had been en route as of the past few days. There are still around 70 trucks that are not accounted for after having entered and delivered humanitarian assistance, because the expectation is that these trucks would come back or remove themselves from the Tigray region, load and return as well. And the reason that I am calling your attention to this is that about 3 hours ago, the terrorist TPLF group have posted a statement online with images showing their fighters on trucks resembling these ones that have been deployed for humanitarian assistance. So I leave the investigation to you. Moving on, humanitarian flights for personnel, cargo and cash is still ongoing, and movement has been undertaken from Addis to Mekelle through UNHS flights. As of August 31st, 2021, the National Disaster Risk Management Commission has approved for 31 partners to transport a total of 114.2 million birr to Mekelle for their humanitarian operation. Humanitarian partners, the WFP and the Joint Emergency Operation that I mentioned earlier, currently are operating in Tigray and dispatching food to waradas and distributing to beneficiaries. And humanitarian cargo movement continues to be facilitated through Samarat to Abala corridor, with the checkpoints that have been now decreased from 7 to 2 to facilitate the ongoing delivery of humanitarian assistance. On a third note, before I open it up to questions, is the continued violence by TPLF. And in the Amhara region, Dabat Warada, in a Kabale called Channa Taklai Manot, the terrorist TPLF is confirmed to have committed atrocities on an estimated 200 innocent civilians, which includes women, children, elders, and deacons, members of worship establishments. The federal government strongly denounces, in the strongest terms, these targeted killings. While the numbers so far that I have is that an estimated 200 innocent civilians have been targeted, a committee has been established to investigate exactly how many individuals have been killed on the ground. And so these figures may change, but this is the latest figure that I have so far. In recent days, it is to be noted that the terrorist TPLF group has suffered great losses as they are being routed out of the Afar and Amhara regions, and these attacks were retaliatory attacks on innocent civilians. Or loss attacks. The Channa massacre in the Amhara region is an extension of the Maikadra massacre, which has not gained enough international outcry, and committed by TPLF's Samri group that targeted ethnic Amharas in Maikadra and brutally killed over 1,000 civilians in the early days of the conflict. So the same group the government alerted early on in the conflict had fled into neighboring Sudan claiming refugee status, and which had been shot down. These claims or these concerns by the government had been shot down by the international community, accusing the government of being insensitive to the plight of refugees. And yet in the past weeks, TPLF fighters with UNHCR ID cards on them across or outside of the Ethiopian borders have been found within the Amhara region, and UNHCR itself over the past day or so has admitted a decrease in the number of refugees that it cannot account for. In TPLF's destruction spree, it is known that they have been pillaging and destroying places of worship, government offices, health centers. The recent and sad destruction is in Sakota, where renowned global athlete Haile Gebrselassie, who had built a school for up to 500 impoverished children in the community, has been completely decimated. This group has been destroyed by the terrorist group, true to the words of their spokesperson, who several weeks ago indicated in an interview that they would take punitive measures in the Amhara region. So these are the updates that I have for you for this week, and I will open it up to questions. Okay, so let's start on this side with Brooke, Iskander, Robbie, and then we'll come to this side.
Much. My first question is about the Prime Minister's visits on the African continent and in Eurasia recently. So what's the administration of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed trying to achieve through these diplomatic shuttles to different parts of the world? And what exactly does the administration expect to get out of these, especially the countries visited on the African continent? And the second question is, these visits by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed come following recent announcements of closure of various diplomatic missions in different countries. So if there is this much need for diplomatic influence both on the African continent and on other continents, don't these two actions contradict the need for diplomatic influence and the action to close these diplomatic missions contradict? And the other point is, there is a recent report by statement by the TPLF that they have withdrawn from the Afar region. So what's your take on this report, and do you have verified information that the TPLF has really actually left the Afar region? And finally, there are reports of deaths due to starvation in Tigray region, and the recent report by statement by the TPLF too indicated that about 150 by the TPLF.
No, recent report
statement by the TPLF indicated that about 150 people have already died due to starvation. So what exactly is the government doing in order to avoid future deaths due to lack of food and life-saving assistance in Tigray region? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brooke. That's quite a lot of questions. I hope I won't forget any one of them. On your first question with reference to the Prime Minister's recent trips as well as the ones that had been done before, they are not in any way related to the mission closures that you mentioned. What the country aims to gain is further strengthening bilateral ties. Ethiopia has long established ties with a lot of these countries, particularly on the recent trip Senegal and Ghana. They had played a big role in Ethiopia's early aspirations and ambitions, and in the process that Ethiopia had taken to initiate and establish the former Organization for African Unity and now the African Union. So this is just a continuation of those relationships, and in terms of other relations as well, diplomatic relations, there has been continuous engagements that have been undertaken by the government with these particular countries. So this is just a continuation and extension of that. It is no surprise that the Prime Minister, from the heydays of his premiership, he has championed particularly an integration agenda within the continent. The focus had been on a regional integration agenda of the Horn, but this is something that he has often also expressed in terms of championing within the continent as well. Ethiopia's signing of the ACFTA is also one aspect of catalyzing the integration agenda. So part of these conversations that are happening is how better these relationships can be further nurtured, because the African continent has got a lot of potential to collaborate with each other. There's a lot of instruments that have been put in place. So further realizing and enacting these instruments for the development of the continent and in realization of Agenda 2063 is something that has always been close to the Prime Minister's heart and agenda, and this is what we're seeing. You had referenced again whether it will contradict the diplomatic missions closures. Not at all. The diplomatic missions have been doing assignments or undertaking assignments that they were within the context of their mandate. The Prime Minister is further strengthening these relationships at a higher level. So those continued engagements, whether the missions are closed or not, will still continue with the strengthening of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here. TPLF's claims of having withdrawn from the Afar region, and I put it quote unquote, that is not true. They have been routed. The Afar militia has been working in close collaboration with the National Defense Forces, and the TPLF have sustained a lot of losses over the past weeks, and this is by way of a successful routing of the TPLF forces out of the Afar region. The claims that have been made with regards to deaths related to starvation, we really need to look at it from the context of what has been happening with TPLF's belligerence and many other testimonies that have been coming from international humanitarian assistance agencies as well, indicating that TPLF has been looting humanitarian assistance. So while we cannot corroborate these facts, which has been at the federal level, which has been given by certain individuals within the Tigray region, what I can refer back to is the looting of humanitarian assistance by the TPLF. Recently, over the past few days, we have also seen within Tigray, on Tigray TV, where communities are being mobilized to prepare food in support of these fighters who have been deemed terrorists by the state. So it's a little bit contradictory as well, the images that are coming out and the claims that are being made by the same group. So I leave it at that. Iskander?
Thank you, Bilani. On the issues you touched on earlier, you said a committee has been set up to investigate the China massacre in Dabat area. What is the committee comprised of, and what is it tasked with? I mean, my second question is, you talked about UNHCR's statement earlier. UNHCR said it is not able to verify the whereabouts of Ethiopian refugees who have left the camps in Sudan. Has the Ethiopian government been in contact with UNHCR to talk about the whereabouts of these refugees, or can you give us more information on that?
You have another question?
Okay, one more question. One last question. Some media reports indicate that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has accepted the mediation of President Kiir in the Tigray conflict. Can you confirm that? Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. On your query with regards to the committee that has been formed to investigate the Jana massacre, I was referring earlier that there was a specific number that had been reported, which has been part of my briefing, but the exact numbers would still require further investigation because this is something that happened or that was just discovered recently as well. So this committee, I imagine, I still don't have further details on that. I'll come back to you on that. But what I've been told is that there's leadership on the ground to assess what damages have been sustained within the community further to the information that has already been released. On UNHCR statements as regards to the whereabouts, I just indicated that about a week and a half ago within the Amhara region, the Amhara leadership has also confirmed and shown material evidence that these refugees have actually been found, or some of these refugees have been found within their bodies, showcasing UNHCR refugee ID cards indicating that there are those whose whereabouts has not been confirmed. The Ethiopian government, through the entity that is concerned with these kind of issues, will continue investigating and looking into this matter. But I think it's important to highlight that this is something that we have been stating as early as January as well, right after the Maikadra massacre had happened, that there was an influx of these these individuals who are suspected of having been involved in the Maikadra massacre, having fled to the Sudan and taken on the personas of refugees. So over the next few weeks, I hope that we'll be able to find more information with regards to where are the whereabouts of those refugees and who they actually are. On your last question, there are efforts by well-meaning neighbors and other African countries and actors who are invested in Ethiopia's stability and growth for a peaceful resolution of what's happening in the northern part of the country. These efforts are seen positively by the Ethiopian government and as an extension of goodwill, and they are being reviewed. So that is as far as I will be able to share with you on that. Other questions? Robbie?
Thank you for the briefing. I wanted to ask, does the federal government have any comments or response to Kenya's recent statements at the UN Security Council encouraging declassifying the TPLF as a terrorist organization so as to foster negotiations? And secondly, with New Year approaching, what is the Prime Minister's message to those who are caught up in conflict at this time? And can you talk about the office's vision for the coming year and goals? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robbie. Yes, you do catch us just right a day before New Year's Eve. So I said you do catch us that it's a day before New Year's Eve. Responding to your first question on, I think there's other calls as well, or other conversations that are happening with regards to the TPLF terrorist designation, supposed lifting. As you know, while the cabinet is the one that had tabled the proposal for the designation of TPLF as a terrorist organization, it is the House of People's Representative, which represents millions of Ethiopians, and as the body that legalized the designation of the TPLF as a terrorist organization for the atrocities that it has committed in this short period of a span of 1 year, in the period of the 3 years since the reforms, and also for the atrocities that it had committed as part of its nature and behavior over the 27 years that it had reigned. Now, this body, the parliament, is in recess, as we all know, and such a process can only be tabled and addressed when the new government is formed, which is to take place sometime in early October. However, I would also like to reiterate again that TPLF has been categorized and long remained as a Tier 3 terror organization by the US government. And we also do not see international pressure for Western governments to sit and negotiate with groups they have designated as global terror organizations. As it pertains to the New Year message that the Prime Minister has, this is part of the annual tradition that will be released tomorrow, so we will make that available in short form in English as well. Thank you. Antis?
Excuse me. I was just wondering if there was any mechanism put in place for the federal government to track the process of delivery and distribution of food in areas where government structure is not there.
Process of delivery of what?
In other words, how can we tell food sent in Tigray, for example, is delivered to the needy, really? How can we tell it has not been diverted to by the militants and used as such?
Well, at this, I mean, it has been looted. We have clear cases and material evidence that has surfaced that shows that the TPLF have looted humanitarian assistance intended for beneficiaries that are not combatants. Again, the TPLF is having a global outcry saying that the people within the region who are Ethiopian people, and the responsibility of the federal government as well, are not being assisted. Yet we are seeing that there is a routing and that there is pillaging of humanitarian assistance. The USAID has also confirmed this as well. But as it pertains to your question of reporting, humanitarian actors that are involved in delivering humanitarian assistance within the region have a responsibility to report to the federal government in terms of the assistance that is going through, the beneficiaries that have been accounted for, and that assistance has reached as well. If you recall, about 2 weeks ago in the briefing that we had, one of the challenges that had been put forth by the federal government as it pertains to humanitarian assistance is that these reports are not coming through. So humanitarian actors are not also delivering upon their responsibility to respond or to report to the federal government on these issues.
So can we say taxpayers are financing the
The food assistance that is being provided in the Tigray region before the unilateral ceasefire, as you know, 70% of the humanitarian food assistance was being funneled by the federal government. As of the ceasefire, the unilateral ceasefire that had been enacted by the federal government, it is more the humanitarian actors that are now taking a lead, except in some pockets of the Tigray region in which the federal government is still active in the provision of humanitarian assistance. So I think the right channel of questioning or putting these queries is to humanitarian actors in terms of how do they account for the assistance that they are delivering into the region, and ensuring that beneficiaries in whose name assistance is coming are the ones that are actually receiving it. Any other questions?
Thank you. You confirmed that the TPLF fighters have been completely wiped out from the state of Afar. And do you think the areas that are still under the control of the TPLF in the state of Amhara will be freed anytime soon? And what is the government doing to prevent the TPLF fighters from committing atrocities like the China one? And the second question, is there any development regarding the negotiation between Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt on GED? We haven't heard anything since the matter was taken to the UNSC. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll respond to your first question, which is within the context of the briefing, and leave your second question for follow-up. On the first question, the reports that I have is that the TPLF are not active in Afar region, that they have been completely routed by the collaborative effort of the joint mission of the Afar Regional Forces and the National Defense Forces. As to other operations that are in place to ensure that peace and stability is brought into the Amhara region, and that TPLF is not allowed to continue in its spree of destruction. This is again an operational matter, so I cannot foresee and tell you that by this date this will be done. I will leave it to those that are in active operation to come to the public and specify when it will be. But the ultimate goal of this defensive posture by the federal government through the security sector is ensuring that TPLF does not continue pillaging, TPLF does not continue destroying communities, and its overt attempts to destabilize not only the Amhara region, but by way of other actors, other parts of the country is thwarted. So that's going to be a continued goal of the federal government for the upcoming year as well. If there's not any other questions, then I will leave you with this for today. Thank you.